And we will hope that Ed is dialing in any minute. We'll let Aaron watch for strange numbers in the corner and see if it works. Good evening. It is 6:02 p.m. on Wednesday, June 7th. And we are starting a regular meeting of Bluff P&Z, Bluff Planning and Zoning. And we're going to start with roll call for that. So we have Marcia Haydenfeld. I'm the vice chair and I'm acting as chair this evening because Amanda has an excused absence. Go ahead with roll call.
Brian Whitney.
Malia Collins.
Okay. And we will hope that you get to see. Let's see. And for town council, I understand Luann could not be here. I think Ann was saying she might try, but I do see Erin.
Yes, Erin Nelson serving as town manager. I received confirmation from both Ann and Luann they're unable to attend tonight. So
Okay.
I'll do the update in their stead.
Great. Thank you, Erin. That'll be perfect. And Erin is actually, as I mentioned, doing our tech tonight for sharing, etc. So that'll be good. Okay, in that case, we can go ahead and start our agenda, and we begin with the approval of meeting minutes. So let's go back to May 17th, which was our actual regular meeting. And I believe we have, we have it right on the screen. Let's see, I believe I read through it, and if we go slowly across, which Erin is doing, we can see if anyone had any comments, or if Brian or Malia, you need to stop and tell me a comment, that would be fine. Okay, I don't see any comments, corrections, or anything listed there. Do we have a discussion or motion, please?
Motion to approve them.
Okay, I have a motion from Brian and I have a second from Malia to accept the Wednesday 5/17 minutes as submitted. And any discussion? Excuse me. And oh, great! We have
Ed!
Yay! Ed made it. Oh, we have consultant Jim hooking up Ed, which is great. Okay. Thank you. We'll give him 1 second to click in. Okay, can you hear us okay? We can see you. We can see Jim looking at different buttons. All right, let's finish with the minutes, which was a unanimous vote in favor of accepting the minutes from 5/17. Then we will ask Erin to put up the minutes of 5/22, which is our public hearing minutes. And for that, we're going to have us just look through the same way and see if we made any comments of change. So there goes our screen. And we're scrolling down to see if anything happened. And I don't see any comments made yet. Ed or Malia or Brian, if you see anything that we need to fix. I thought it was so nicely done because it is so hard to take minutes in a public hearing, but I was very appreciative of how these went in order. Yes, Malia.
I believe that this is the work session minutes, not the public hearing, correct?
Excuse me. I'm sorry. You know what? You're right. This should be the public. Oh, I'm sorry, Malia. Thank you for catching that.
Sure thing.
I was thinking public hearing. I said public hearing, and then I used the work session. So Erin, thank you for finding that. Malia, thank you for catching that. Perfect. And I go right back to saying that I was very pleased with how the minutes were taken at the public hearing. So does anyone have a comment or correction or note for the public hearing meeting minutes? Looking good. I think we
I
did this.
motion to approve those minutes, the aviation public hearing.
I
I
have a,
second that.
okay, Brian second, thank you. So Malia has moved to approve our draft minutes from the public hearing, and Brian has in fact seconded. Any discussion? Is there anything we missed? Okay, all in favor of accepting the minutes, say aye. Aye.
Aye.
I can see Ed's lips moving, and he didn't unmute himself, but are we good? Excellent. Okay, and I heard you, Brian. We are passing that, accepting the minutes by unanimous approval, and thank you very much. The next item we have on our agenda is the public citizens to be heard. And I would like to ask if anyone needs to bring something up that is not on tonight's agenda for discussion. Therefore, you could have 3 minutes to tell us about it. If you'd like to either unmute or hold up your hand, or you can chat box me. Amr, go ahead.
Thanks, Marcia. I have a couple of points. One, I wasn't able to attend the work session, but I went back and looked at the minutes. It seems like the direction that the town is taking, or planning and zoning is taking, is to move aviation to the airport. One thing you guys need to be aware of is that the lease on the airport and the airport patent may not allow for a change of use. I spoke with the BLM this morning, and I did a few weeks ago, and they said the airport is the airport. He said, we tried to give it to the town of Bluff, and I visited with Jim Hook about that a little bit. And so I guess there is a big process, but just want you to keep in mind that you may be working towards a dead end as far as the airport. Maybe there are other ways around it, but just at least so you have that information. The second thing is, I realize that from planning and zoning point of view, you guys maintain that this is strictly an ordinance about aviation, has nothing to do with any particular property. And I respect that, but you can't study this issue without looking at the biggest project that you're going to have for the foreseeable future. And at least, I don't think any one of you have contacted me, came over for a site visit, and I've had a standing invitation for anybody in town to come and ask questions and look around, and because I guarantee you will change your mind when you do. And if you show up, that's not an acknowledgement, which, as a matter of fact, the mayor already acknowledged that the emergency ordinance was as a result of our project. So it's not, denying it is not going to buy anybody anything. But to be open-minded and show up and look at the project and ask questions, you guys will look better that you studied the issue from all angles. But to leave it out, I think you're doing yourself, me, and the town a disservice, to be honest with you. But I do appreciate the work you're putting in. Thank you.
Thank you, Amr. We don't typically answer or go back and forth in terms of public comment. I just want to clarify one thing, and that is in the work session, and I'll talk about it a little later when it comes up on the agenda. In the work session, everything we threw out there is ideas yet to do. There were no votes, no opinion, or there were opinions, but there were no conclusions, I guess is the good way to put it. So I want you to understand that if you listened or read the minutes, yes, we put out there all kinds of things. No flying here, no flying there. We just put it out there. So we're not done. We're not making decisions yet. I wrote down lots of things that I would like to discuss more, but this is not the time. I just want you to know work session was just work.
And the only thing, I guess, on the agenda that kind of grabbed my attention is draft the recommendations for the town council. And, to me, that means the bulk of the work was done. So, but I appreciate that. Thank you.
And you'll find out more if you can hang on for the rest of the agenda.
Absolutely.
It's in there. Let us talk about it with you later, or not talk with you, but at you a little
You
later
can
about
always
it.
talk to me about it too.
Okay.
All right. Thanks.
Thank you, Amr, for your
Thanks,
comment.
Marcia.
Okay. Anybody else with comments, please, from the items, public citizen, but items not on the agenda that we're not discussing. Everybody okay? Okay. Seeing nobody else from the public citizens, we're going to close that section and go on to our old business section. And that starts with an update from town council. And in that case, this is Erin taking in or speaking for town council as to what's going on. Thank you, Erin.
Thanks, Marcia. So I believe since you all last met, there were 2 meetings, which would have been last night. We had a public hearing regarding the fiscal 2023 proposed amended budget, as well as the fiscal 2024 tentative budget, proposed tentative budget. From 5:30 till 6. Essentially, I presented information regarding kind of where we're at for our current fiscal year to close the year, and then there are some projections for next year. So those budgets can be found online for any of the public, and the council will vote on those within the next 2 meetings because they do have to be approved by June 22nd. During the regular town council meeting last night, we received an update from the Active Transportation Advisory Committee from Molly Schmidt regarding where they're at in their planning process. She had a nice little PowerPoint for us that talked about the work that they're doing. They are currently in the process of doing edits and recommendations on a proposed map that would be a part of the complete active transportation plan that Bike Utah is working on. So round 1 takes place from May 30th through June 27th, and that's an internal review by their committee and their advising group. Round 2 is going to be a residential time period to comment on the proposed map. That'll be from June 30th through July 10th. And then they are asking and requesting that the town council vote on a proposed map by July 18th. The town council did say that, probably additional work would need to be done or potentially, additional meetings, but I would definitely advise folks to keep an eye out for, as they move through that progression. They also talked about grants because we know that projects like this are quite expensive. So they are doing their due diligence and looking for grants. So very much a planning land use situation there. Airport maintenance is taking place this week. That includes general maintenance on the landing strip. We also have the town council approved, and it has subsequently been posted. We are soliciting bids for the CCC building ceiling removal, demolition and ceiling removal of materials. So that can be found on our website. It's on our homepage. It does have a pretty quick turnaround, and bids are due by June 15th, so next week, June 15th at 5 p.m. So if you know anyone who is looking to take out a ceiling for us, that would be great. All information's on the website. And then finally, because there's so much going on, the town council did also agree to have their own work session on Tuesday, June 13th at 11 a.m. And then, of course, they have their regular scheduled meetings that night at 6. I think that's what would be applicable to you all. Any questions or clarifications that I can answer? Malia?
I have a question on who does the maintenance on the airport.
So we have a contract with an engineering firm that helped us through that process. And so there was a formal sealed bid process in which we received competitive bids. It's a pretty significant project totaling $138,000. And so the firm that actually was awarded the bid, I believe, I'm going to get myself mixed up. I know they're not from the state of Utah. I want to say they were maybe from Nevada. But they were awarded the contract through through the competitive bid process. For minor maintenance, that would probably usually go through the airport manager. But this is a pretty big contract that they're currently working on, and we hope to have that cleaned up soon. Finished
Cool.
up soon.
Thank you.
Thanks, Malia.
Thank you. Go ahead, Jim.
I just wanted to point out that 90% of that cost is borne by the Utah Aviation Administration and the FAA, and Bluffs is 10% of that.
That's a very good clarification. We are not paying 138. We are paying closer to $13,000. So we very much appreciate our state partners in that. Thank you, Jim.
Thank you. Okay. We are continuing from the update of town council to the update on signage enforcement, which is also Erin. Ta-da!
And unfortunately, I haven't received any notification or any movement on that as of today.
Okay. I would express in general that I think that if we spot something that isn't correct or we don't believe to be correct, we should be following up on what to do about that. And I think Chris has been a great attorney to work with whenever I've interacted with him on a project. But I think because he has a full plate that doesn't just include Bluff, I think we get a little bogged down. So I'm just wondering what an alternative to that might look like, where we say, we don't believe something is right about, pick a sign. And should we not just meet with the person involved and figure out what's next? Or don't know. So I'm just throwing that out there, and I don't have a say of that. I have the town doing the enforcement, which they should. But I'm just wondering. Okay. In that case, does anyone else have a comment to the sign enforcement? Okay. We can work on the next one, which is the site plan application update. Ta-da, Erin is up. Do we have any movement on that?
Yes. So due to the fairly lengthy requirements in the current zoning code, of course, we always have to go off of what we currently have in the zoning code. Amanda and I have been combing through and putting together a more in-depth application, which would benefit you all as commissioners, as well as the public, to ensure that they fully understand what's required if they're submitting an application. I don't know, and I did not receive information from Amanda regarding when she wanted to bring this before you all. I would imagine that it would be something that you would, potentially look over during a work session, given that it is fairly lengthy. But we are just wanting to ensure that everything is captured and in a user-friendly format. So, as I said, I didn't get information prior to this meeting regarding her thoughts on when it would be ready for you all, but it is. And then the other thing, which falls again to town council, is regarding if a fee would be. Gosh, sorry, lots of thunder. I am.
Yeah, I know. We're all looking
skies.
at-
I'm sorry. Okay, my apologies. Whether a fee would be associated with that application or not, that's something that they talked about last night, and they're going to be talking about during their work session, is fee schedule in general. And I think we would recommend planning and zoning. You probably wouldn't want to release a form and then have to change it, a week or two later if town council was to change the fee schedule. So all that to be said, working on it, and I would probably recommend that we put this on, if not an update, an evaluation of what's been gathered during one of your upcoming meetings.
Thank you, Erin. Does anyone have any questions for Erin from the team here from P&Z? Okay, I just would comment that I really appreciate us going through it, sort of fine-tooth comb at this point, because you're right, we don't want to do it again. And we find ourselves catching up to our we find ourselves catching up paperwork to our ordinances, et cetera. And I love that we're doing that, but we want to get it right. I also agree that we need the fee list so that the public understands it costs us time and money to make these things happen. So there's a charge to make these things happen. Okay, that's my 2 cents, and I've given about 6 cents so far, so I'll stop. On the new business list, we start with land use clearances, and we have not been presented with any. I don't believe. Has anyone seen anything that we missed? Okay. We are going to work on next, well, don't you know it, it's Erin again, the status of a joint session to work on LUDMA ULCT state legislative requirements. And if you recall, the state passes planning and zoning state laws every year, every session they do. And when they pass them, it falls to the communities, be it big cities, small towns, to live up to the new laws. So there are some major changes that were done, and we all heard about that if we listened to our training online this year. And when we heard about it, I don't know about you, but I went, oh, wow, we have some things to do. So Erin, can you tell us what we're doing about that?
Just, wow, I feel like I'm a broken record today. And also I was scared when I saw your agenda. I was like, huh. Okay, so I guess I should ask the question first. Has everyone listened to the training? Did you have any like pointed questions or did you listen to it? Did you have access to it? Everyone good?
Well, I know I did, and I probably had some pointed questions, but Wolf Summercourt, is that his last name? He does such an incredible job of going through these things, and you go, oh my goodness. And I've watched him do it for many years now. But I don't have them in front of me, and I don't think it's something we want to discuss tonight. I think it's the idea that we just need to know what the city expects us, or the town of Bluff thinks we are supposed to be doing.
Yes. So as long as everyone has had access to the training, I feel a little bit better. I will say this has also been something that we are waiting to hear from town legal counsel about, as they were going to put together a pretty in-depth list of exactly what we needed. So we were looking for a little bit of guidance there. And shockingly, I have not heard anything yet regarding that coming back to our desks either. I know with town council, there's been a lot going on. And as you saw, they're scheduling the work session. We've had budgets, not to make excuses. I can wrap back around with the lawyer to see where this is at on their priority list. But I would hope that this is something that we can really take a look at this summer, given some of the deadlines that were outlined in the training. And I fully recognize that you all are facing deadlines. So I will try to prompt that as something we can move forward.
I think we had deadlines that were a little longer for the small towns than some of the big city stuff, but I agree with you. Malia, Brian, Ed, any questions for Erin where we stand on these items? All right, I'm seeing shaking heads, and thank you, Brian. Okay, so the next thing on our list is a discussion of aviation ordinance recommendation and next steps. So to calm the waters, there's no vote tonight to say yay, nay, fly, don't fly, whatever. What we would like to explain, and I'll take the lead here and explain what we did, and then ask Brian or Malia or Ed or anyone to comment if I missed something. But here is a general overview of what happened. We had an excellent work session. It was so nice to be in person and kind of give each other, go round and round and interrupt each other and do all the things we're supposed to do at a meeting and have some really good discussion. We had the maps in front of us. We had things that made us talk. And Amanda did a wonderful job of laying it out. So the steps were talk about, or each of us to mention what we heard at the public hearing and read in the comments. And we were all able to say how we read that, or what we read and heard. And the second thing was just a general consensus, not a vote or anything. Do we believe that we would need an aviation ordinance for the town of Bluff? And the third and most important part that maybe Amr was taking away as our decision, which wasn't, and that is, what would we like to see in an aviation ordinance? And that, of course, brought up the most discussion, because we all have not necessarily different opinions, but more opinions. It would be like, oh, and I forgot this, and someone else would add something else. So it was great. All of those things are on the table. And most importantly, the learning curve of, we're not going to write this aviation ordinance. These, the five of us are really smart people, but we're not aviation experts. So we're going to ask the town, if this begins to happen, that we get some aviation ordinance direction, such as a draft, and we add and look at the comments to it. However, to even get to that step, it was determined last night that we continue to work on the thoughts we were expressing. For example, where and how to fly, who can fly, is it residential, commercial, or recreational? What kind of aircraft will fly? Thank you, Brian, we got your list. And the things that will contribute to this. And somewhat to Amr's point, or whatever, is the one big one we talked about is what we would have jurisdiction over doing with BLM, with anybody else. So all of these things were on the table. And it is our thought that we would take these ideas into a plan if we vote to tell town that we recommend an aviation ordinance. We would add to it a list of what we might like to see in that ordinance. And that's where we are. No votes, no, final opinions, just lots of good ideas, or a few bad ones. And we have the next steps, which is listed right here on the agenda, are to keep discussing that till we can bring something forward. Could possibly be a no. It could be, wait a minute, this is too much and it's not what we need to do. Once again, in direction of sort of where Amr was coming from, aviation ordinance means all flight things, all things that fly. And I know that Brian took the time to give us a list of many of those things, and that will in fact help us to direct our thoughts. Now, the first thing I'd like to do is ask the team, did I miss anything besides the amazing thunderstorm we're getting in the sunshine here? Did I miss anything in my report of what we did? And the second thing I will then ask is, what should we pick on to discuss this evening to keep going? Anybody have a comment? Malia or Brian? Ed?
I think you hit all the major points, except for that it's raining now too.
I know, it's amazing out here. Okay, thank you, Brian. Malia, you're good with where we are and kind of the wrap up, and Ed also good. Okay.
Well said.
All right, that is a general wrap up of what we did. But since we have a little time, I was hoping that we might pick one of those items to help us just move the discussion along. There was an important one that Amanda added to our list of ideas, and that was called an aviation overlay for the zoning. And I loved that one because basically think of a Mylar piece of paper laid over the town map, and you put on it where people can fly what. And we have not come to that yet. We haven't come to, is it just commercial? Is it just agricultural? Is it just whatever? So one of the things that stopped us from coming to is knowing what aviation, what aircraft we were including. To that end, Brian got the assignment last night of kind of giving us a list of some of those ideas. And Brian, would you address a little bit the list you sent us, just even quickly reading it, to tell us what we might be talking about for aircraft?
Yeah, absolutely. Oh, there it is.
Good, nice.
Yeah, I mean, this is a working list, and I'm not an aviation expert, and I used Wikipedia and a few other references to try and just figure out like what aviation actually means. And then I tried to place them into these categories that we had discussed. Within commercial, so there's some redundancy. Fixed wing, I think, means anything that has two wings that the aircraft glides on. So planes, gliders, I think most those types of things that we think of as airplanes. Rotorcraft is a helicopter or anything that uses a rotary blade. Aerostats is a fancy way of saying balloons. Is what I found out. I could have just written balloons, but aerostats sounded cooler. Powered lift aircraft were things like the moon lander, which also I think, but I included them because, Marcia, your point to some of these newer crafts, like some of the unmanned personal flying devices. I think about like the air taxis that they're about to launch in Los Angeles for the Olympics. I think those are powered lift aircrafts and not anything else. So I just wanted to expand into that area. Unmanned aircraft is drones. I thought it was important to include drones. And then skydiving and parachutes. I think that's pretty well known at this point. I figured that was kind of a commercial application too, thinking about taking off and landing for skydiving and parachutes. And then residential, I put kites in there too because Wikipedia said that kites is a type of aircraft, but I figured almost anything that you can do commercially, you can do residentially. So I kind of copied a lot of that. And the recreational aircraft, that one's not as built out. That was a little bit of a confusing topic to me of what that means and how that is different than residential. But in those, I put the paragliding and glider suits, which probably also have commercial applications, but paragliding being flight via parachute and the little nesting, I don't know what that's called, but you're connected to a little basically a sleeping bag attached to a parachute, and then the glider suit being the squirrel suits, and because that's also another thing of taking off and landing. So yeah, and I think if anyone wants to swap anything around or add things to these different things, but that was sort of the basis that I started on, just different types of aircraft we may want to think about.
Brian, that's a great list. And the only thing I would say is what you just ended with, and that is how we switch these things or put them in all the different lists, because we certainly can think of drones as recreational or what are they called? RC, radio controlled stuff that like the kids like to do. We have a young man in town who loves his RC flying things. And so I think of that as recreational, and it's either a drone or those funky planes
Right.
So I think this is a great list and what we add. Go ahead, Malia. What do you see?
First off, thank you so much. What a beautiful list. I'm happy to see kites in there. That's very important. So thinking about it just now upon your question of what is the difference between residential and recreational, and something that I just thought of is residential would probably be people that live here, whereas recreational could also be done by guests.
That's a good point. Yeah.
Kind of my thoughts on that.
Yep.
Right.
But I like your list. I think it's great. And yeah, it's time to start moving them around and seeing where we'd want them to be, I guess. But I mean, even recreational could be kites. All of those within commercial and residential, like you're saying, could also just be put over to recreational, depending on what the availability of those pads are for them.
It may be interesting for us to be able to use this list and then say, if you use it here, there, wherever, it is only recreational, or here it is only commercial, or it may be that the list has to crisscross by the zoning we do. If that becomes the plan, if that overlay becomes the plan, this could well be a list to put in all different places. Fascinating. So the conclusion we have come to is that these different things fit different places that'll help tell us what we'd like to see zoned for Bluff, then we would be taking into account any other factors, such as, is it private land, is it public lands, is it, that sort of thing. So we're going to have layers of this, I think. Let's see. What I thought we might talk about then with maybe using this list was that we talked about what commercial would look like. So if we use the commercial list and we say fixed wing aircraft commercial travel, what would you like to see in the town? Once again, we're throwing out ideas. We are not voting to make this the law. For example, fixed wing aircraft, in my humble opinion, would be the airport, or as in our airstrip, whether it's developed or not, because it's happening now. However, do we want to see eventually a zone that might include private airstrip for someone who flies a plane? So fixed wing residential then could build an airstrip out in a development somewhere? Or do we want to say we're not dealing with that at all? We don't want to see that in our town borders, so we only want fixed wing to be commercial? I don't know. Those are the kinds of things I think we need to look at. Is it possible that we can't, that because we're talking about this zoning overlay, that we kind of need that in front of us to progress this point? I don't know. I need a little input from the team as to what we'd like to see next. Because we had a pretty good list of good ideas.
Yeah, it sort of feels like, just that first thought experiment that you put up there too about residential airstrips. I think the overlay or the map would make a huge difference, but also I think that gets into sort of the other issue of us not being aviation experts, in that, part of me is like, yeah, I wouldn't, like, who am I to say that someone couldn't do that if they had the land for it and the space for it? But at the same time, I don't know what it requires to land an airplane. So I also, I feel like I don't have the right amount of information to answer that question properly, because there is, so I guess it would depend on the space available and what it takes to land a plane safely. And so I guess I would feel like I don't. Yeah, so maybe I don't have enough information without maps and some more information in front of me.
Sure. And that, one of the things we were talking about yesterday, and I think mostly it was me and my big mouth, was the idea that people have their own plane, so why not fly it to their own strip? Well, I think of the top of the bench, if we don't lose a lot of it. But anyway, the top of the bench is inside Bluff limits. Maybe someone has a development there and puts a little strip and you can land there. I'm not saying yes or no. I'm just saying those are the things that we have to think about. The idea of the helicopter rotorcraft, we'll do rotorcraft, so we are correct. Same story. If we say rotorcraft can land because they're running a commercial operation, where is that versus someone who has a helicopter, a rotorcraft? And what Brian mentioned, where I know personally of airplanes being developed, and they are already out there, that land rotor, stand up rotor, and lay their wings out and fly fixed wing. So those airplanes exist, and those things are coming. And do we account for it now? Which you did, which is great but do we allow it only commercial or residential? Kites. I love kites. What are we going to do about kites? No kites in my town.
Those should only be an A1.
Exactly. You can only
Just
fly
kidding.
in agriculture.
Hey, kites can be pretty big. You don't
Not
know.
true.
Kites are not just like a little thing that a kid has. I've seen some pretty epic kites.
I agree. Okay. What is the next step? Does anyone have anything else that we can bring out this evening, or is it better left to say, here's the next part. We can continue this sort of general discussion, which I'm using this mostly to assure the public that we are trying to address this in some sort of controlled way. We want to talk about aviation in Bluff, and we want to make sure that all of the topics that we can cover, that's why this list was generated, to at least think about these things. And we wanted to think about all of the places in Bluff, and that's why we're generating this overlay discussion we're having. If we proceed with this, these are the types of things we're trying to do. So my suggestion is, since it's a little difficult to kind of be general tonight, we aim for either another work session or a meeting specific to this discussion, be it a regular meeting or work session, and that we leave it for this evening with our little mini discussion of aircraft. I'd like to hear from the team. What are we thinking?
I think that a work session sounds wonderful because I'm currently just reviewing the different zones and what is allowed in each district and each zone. And I think that it'd be really nice to have all of us. I like the face-to-face where we're able to look at it together and discuss this and look at the map at the same time. I think that that's really helpful. So I vote work session. All of that.
Great. Malia, thank you. That's much along my thinking. Go ahead, Brian. Did you? Oh, you didn't. Okay, Brian or Ed, anybody else have any input on that? Okay.
I feel the same way as Malia.
Okay. Okay. And Ed is nodding his head, and wisely nodding his head. And okay, I think what we will do is we will leave this subject for this evening. We will consult and get Amanda back into the fold to consult on this work session, because we discussed a little bit some dates or ideas. And at that work session, do this again, maybe with a piece of plastic on top of a map and just playing with markers and going, and that may help us hone whether we're doing this, or how we're doing this. Is everyone good? All right. Thank you for that. And I hope the public understands we're just working as hard as we can to understand what's in front of us and to offer the town of Bluff an answer, and hope that more people love it than hate it, but you're never going to get it all. Okay. After aviation ordinance, the next thing on our agenda is items for the next agenda. And at this point, we'd be talking about items for an actual regular meeting, which we've added to the usual updates that Erin was so kind to keep on the list. And we're going to add, I believe we should keep discussion of aviation ordinance, or we should keep aviation ordinance on there, because if nothing else, we can update the discussions with the public. Although the public is most welcome at work sessions to listen to us do that. So I like that. Does anyone have anything else that we need on the next agenda? This is a quiet little group tonight. Okay. I believe that is good for that one. We now have the subject called other, and that is for, go Malia, go, sorry.
Wait. A couple of things for the next agenda. Should we keep the signage enforcement on there? Oh, am I looking at something?
No, you're good. You're totally good. I think those are the couple of updates I was referencing.
Oh, okay.
Signage enforcement, site plan application. Actually, that site plan application may be a little more forward than, maybe a little more ready for discussion. So that could be a good one that, comes up. Go ahead. Did you see it? The LUDMA one?
And then the joint session, is that with us? Should we be attending that? Sorry, I'm kind of going back a little bit. Should that be on our next agenda?
The status of the joint session to review LUDMA is Town Council and P&Z working together to decide what's next. And yes, we will be together when Chris, the attorney, tells town that he's ready to tell us what to do.
Got it.
We got a lot of assignments from the state legislature.
Right.
Some of it will come through our legal people anyway, and we probably wouldn't even be involved. But a lot of it will be planning and zoning has to redo, re-up, renegotiate. We have to a few things. So
Perfect.
we'll find that out. But yes, Malia, I agree. All of those should remain on the schedule, on the agenda, because then at least we tick off the latest information.
Mm-hmm. And I know that you and I do have a meeting planned for RV, so we could add that to the next agenda.
Actually,
least-
actually, that for me, that was under other, which is
Oh.
coming up in a second. But no, I'm
Okay.
totally with you. I want to say under other that we got a lot bogged down in things like aviation and other things and life, because Malia and I still have one, or still have ours. And so
Together.
Malia and I are going to meet just to hone the RV discussion a little bit so we can present something at the next time. We could say items for next agenda RV update, because then you and I might have at least something to report that we tried. We tried. Okay.
Well, thank you guys for doing that. You did more than try.
Well, we overdid, so we're going to edit ourselves a little bit on the RV stuff. So, okay, ladies and gentlemen of planning and zoning, does anyone have anything else? We've got a few minutes left because we kind of cut our aviation discussion a little bit. Is everyone good? Did we miss anything? Okay. In that case, I would entertain a motion to end our discussion, our meeting.
I saw Ed mouth it.
I know, Ed,
Over there.
so moved. There you go. That is Ed's famous line, so moved. And he would like to move to adjourn. Do I hear a second? I see a second. I see one from Malia. Ladies and gentlemen, we have a motion to adjourn. Everyone in favor, yell aye. No, say aye.
Hi.
Ladies and gentlemen, we're adjourned, and I want to thank you all for being here, and Erin especially for your extra help,
Thank you, Aaron.
and the public for their comments and for listening to us. And I promise you, P&Z is working hard to do what we can to make this happen. Thank you, Jim. Thanks for watching
Jim.
the airport. Okay, guys, good night.
Good night, everybody. Watch out for the thunder.